Hello, welcome to the headquarters of the SAA. My name's Mo. I'm here today to paint some lilies for you. I've got a photograph that I took earlier on in the summer when I picked these beautiful lilies from our garden. I've decided to work on a square board and I've done a preparatory sketch. A fault that a lot of people make when they're doing something like this, they'll see the thing as a whole, but I like to home in on the subject. A classic mistake would be to have your board, do the lilies in the middle, and then you've got all this space to fill in. So if you can fill your space with the flowers, because that's really what you wanted to paint in the first place, that's a good start. And I like a square format. I've done a couple in the past using a square. I think the square, put a few pencil guidelines so that you're not watching me labouring at drawing, but normally I go straight in. I've got this lovely, this is an SAA rigger, and I'm using this pot, I'm using diluted, well, it's just white spirit, and diluted, I've got ultramarine and cadmium red. So I'm just mixing a very thin wash of this, very diluted with the rigger, and then I'm just going to draw where my main guidelines are. As I say, I have put a few pencil guidelines just to help me, but I'm still referring to the picture, and of course this can all be changed as you go along. While you're drawing, you should be thinking about colours, background, light against dark. It's not just about the flowers, we're actually making a picture here, so we need to really think about the whole composition. Another thing, this is again, when you're painting flowers, you really need to study the flower. This isn't a very good photograph of this particular one, but it's quite important to see that you have got 3 leaves, petals, laying on top of 3 other petals. So it's not just a case of like a daisy shape. You have to understand how the flower works so that you know that this one is one of the ones that sits on top as opposed to one of the ones underneath, and it will help you very much with your drawing. With this one here, this beautiful petal coming towards us is one of the top ones, as is this one here. Let's get that in. And so that comes under, and this one here comes out from underneath. So we just need to look carefully at the shape, and it does that lovely little tuck around. It comes up underneath there. So we've got a lovely bit of dark happening in there. It's a bit longer than I've drawn it actually. Just a little bit more. Whatever colour you draw in, it doesn't matter, as long as it's thin, it will dry fairly quickly. You really don't want to be drawing with a thick paint because it's not going to dry, and then when you start to put your colours on, it's going to pick it up. Also, use a dark colour, because if you start trying to draw it out with a white line, then the white will stay wet for a long time and it will pick up and it will make all your mixes muddy. I'm working on a toned board. In fact, this one is one I've prepared myself. It's just a sheet of MDF, and I have, with PVA, I've glued a sheet of just cotton. It was an old bed sheet, I think. Glued that on, and then I've given it a couple of coats of gesso, which is readily available, and that's given me a nice surface with a nice tooth.
What colour did you use for the ground?
Ah yes, the colour was well, it depends. On this particular instance, I think that is a mixture of burnt sienna and probably cadmium yellow. because I was thinking about it, whatever colour you use makes a lot of difference to the finished picture. You could go mad and use permanent rose, and those little bits of colour coming through just make it lively. I think it's this one. If you look back at this one, I used again a sort of quite a strong pinky colour underneath, and that comes through. And where it comes through, it helps to tie the picture together. It gives it a key, so that it gives more of a harmony. I normally work with a more limited palette than I've got it laid out here. I've got a lot of colours laid out here. I probably won't use them all, but I thought, because I don't paint flowers very often, so I thought, right, I don't know what I'm going to need. I'm going to put them there in readiness, and then they're there if I want them. I'm getting a bit sketchy now with this. I want to get on with the painting. I probably use only half a dozen. I've actually just come back from painting in France, and obviously when you are abroad, you can't, because of travelling, you can't carry everything with you, much as you'd like to. So I had a group out there, and all the colours I took were ultramarine, magenta, cadmium yellow, cadmium lemon, and also, because we were travelling, the Griffin Alkyd white, because if you use that and you mix that with any of your mixes, it's touch dry the next day. So people worry about travelling with paints and how do you travel and bring your oils back. It wasn't a problem at all, because especially with the heat, they were all touch dry the next day. So we were all able to bring our oil paintings home with us, which is quite useful. I actually have been teaching this particular place in France for a while. It's lovely. And people worry about travelling and how do you get your paints there? Well, I put my order in because I order a lot. And actually, I have to say the SAA have been brilliant, and they've posted the stuff out for me. So I just arrive and everything's there. Wonderful. Now, in this photograph, you can see that one flower, I cut it off because it was in the wrong place, and I put it down here. But it needed a flower there, and it wouldn't go there in the vase. So I've actually transposed it mentally in my sketch. I've brought that flower back into the composition. So that's what I think what you call artistic license. I'm getting a bit lost in this now. I think I can pull it together, hopefully, pull it together when I start to paint. There's a lot of lines, and I haven't put any foliage in. I don't want to get too detailed with that, because the foliage, I can decide where I want it. You can make it work for you. If you've got an area like this lovely kink here that I want a dark, I could put some stronger leaves in that. I think I'll just refer to my sketch again, just to look at that. I did bring some leaves because we've got quite a space here, and I made that a bit, yeah, let's go there a bit better. Yeah, I brought a few more leaves down into this space here, and it can be filled with some darks, so we won't worry too much about that. Right, I better get some colour on. I'm often asked, do I paint the background first or the flowers first? Well, you really have to look at your picture and decide which way round to go. I think I'm going to start by putting in a few darks around here, and probably look for the tones and shading on the white. So, brushes. Right. This is actually an acrylic brush. It's one of the Atelier interactive acrylic brushes, but it works perfectly well for oils. Now, if you're mixing a background, you probably need to have 2 or 3 mixes. But I think I keep changing my mind, don't I? I'm going to just put a few very thin. I've got another dipper here, and in that I've got some linseed, which makes the paint flow a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to mix a very thin wash here. I have to say that red, it's SAA cadmium red, it is so highly pigmented. You need such a little, and I end up taking too much. Right, let's try again. I picked up too much. So now I'm just going to block in some darks. Very, very thin, because it will dry quickly and I can paint over it, but it's helping me now see where I'm going to go with this. So I can block in the darks around. I might have just painted over a lily there. We can always put it back again. Finding my way with this. It's not dark all the way through, but to get the white to stand out, you really do need quite a strong dark. There's a few leaves in here. There are some lilies in the background. Now I've got to try and think about those. I don't want those to be too sharp, otherwise they're going to come forward, and we don't want that. We want them to just sit nicely in the background. Right, let's get a few more shapes in here. That leaf, I didn't do that petal. There we go. Get that in there. So where I can see where I want some strong darks, and then I can mix up my greens. As you can see on my palette, I haven't got any greens there. Well, I have actually, that's a fib. Somebody gave me this, it's cobalt turquoise, and it's such a gorgeous colour. I keep squeezing it out. I haven't used it an awful lot yet. I think I'm being precious with it because it's quite expensive, but it is a lovely colour to mix in, and I thought it might help with some of the subtle shades in the lily, but we'll see if I use it. But as I was saying, greens, I just mix my own. I use either a cadmium and ultramarine, and if it's too bright and green, just a touch of red just takes that down again. Right, these are the buds up here. Fade that off. So you can see that we're beginning to get the lilies, the shape of them standing out from the background. The reason, I don't know if I said, the reason I toned my board, I couldn't possibly work on white because I'd find it very difficult to judge the tones of the colours I'm using. Because even a light colour on white is going to look dark. So I've got the mid-tone, so that helps me judge my tone. So that's sort of coming together a little bit possibly. Now let's get some colour on these lilies. I'm going to start with the shadows, start with the white. If you ever do use pure white, hold off and wait till the very end, because as soon as you use pure white, that is your final highlight, and once you've done that you can't go any brighter. So work your way from the darks to the lights, and that white is your final. I very rarely use it pure. Even in something like this, I'd probably still tint it with a touch of yellow because it warms it up, because otherwise it could look a very cold painting. So I'm looking now for the shadow. Shall I try some of that cobalt turquoise? Oh, that's quite nice. I've also got another colour I don't use very often. It's a violet. Oh, I like that. I don't know if I should be experimenting on live television, but I am. So that's my shadow colour. This is going to come around here. That's a lovely colour. And that is violet with the cobalt turquoise. It's gorgeous. Really, sometimes you have to screw your eyes up very tight just to look for little subtle tones and differences and little bits of colour that you perhaps wouldn't normally see. So we're getting these in here. I do keep screwing my eyes up. I might look a bit strange, but that's not unusual. Right, it goes into a sort of a greenish colour in there. I'll have to try and remember that. In fact, I might just put a little bit more of the turquoise and one of the yellows. I've got cadmium yellow, Indian yellow and lemon yellow as my yellows. So if I'm travelling, I just usually stick with cadmium yellow and lemon, so you've got a warm and a cool. That's going a bit too green. No, we won't go any further with that. No, it's still quite purpley. It's a lovely colour. I'm just going over the whole thing looking for the darker areas. And if I find that it is too dark, and I can always lighten it, but I'm working very much from my dark through to my lights. Little touch in there, lovely bit that kinks under down there. A few as that rolls over. Sort of, when you're painting, try and feel with your brush, think about the shape, think about following the form of the flower. To mix another area here. This one I'm going to use a touch of Indian yellow just to warm that up. So it's quite a yellowy colour. So it's still shadowed, but I've used a touch of Indian yellow in it with the colour I still had on my brush. I don't very often wash my brush while I'm painting. If you do find that you're dipping all the time into your terps pot, make sure you take off the excess, because otherwise you'll be diluting your paints. I have got this linseed down here, which I use sometimes to help paint flow a little quicker, but I don't use it an awful lot. The photograph's bled out all the colour on this, so I'm just trying to think about which leaf is on top. So this one's underneath, so there'll be a bit of shadow just so that we can see that that is sitting on top of that. I'll put a bit down there as well. That goes off into the light. So I'm just going back round over it again, coming back up to here. Shadow. So we've got to think about these flowers in the background. They are a bit darker. I'm going to mix more of a purpley colour. I've got the quinacridone here. Permanent rose or the quinacridone. I see it again, that's far too pink. I wonder what happened if I put some of that in. A bit too blue. Try a bit of blue in it. So although it's quite dark, it's going to hopefully still read as a light colour. It might be a bit purple actually. I'll just take that down with a touch of cadmium red. Yeah, that's not quite as purple now. Yes, it is. Take it the other side of that, and we can fuzz that off a bit lighter. Start, when you're mixing light colours, always start by mixing with your white, because if you start with the colour that you think you're going to use up an awful lot of colour to make that, bring that back up to the light colour that you want. Go back over here. Right, oh yeah, let's get that in. Over there. So I'm still working really quite dark, considering they're supposed to be white flowers. Now then, where's that one? That one. Oh yes. I haven't done a detailed drawing, as you can see, because I think if you do, you end up colouring it in. And I do like to keep the feeling of movement and going round. So this one is tucked in behind that, so I'm keeping that a bit darker. I can bring some light colours back into it, but for now I'm just going to get that curls underneath there, that comes round, little flick back there. Okay. Think about edges as well. I don't like, well, personally, I don't like to see edges that are too hard on flowers. Where was I? Oh yes. There we go, I'll get that in. So I'm really looking here for all the shadows that I can see. Some of them might even need to go a little bit darker, but when I start putting the light in, I think that'll all come, the shapes will come in. Again, that one's a little bit in there. Maybe I might start looking also at getting some, that's a green up there, but I'm just putting some shadow on to remind me that the light's coming this way, just to get some shading on that. Okay, need to go a little bit lighter now. Working my way towards the lighter colours. It's still quite blue, isn't it? We'll see what happens. And in there. Okay. There. Bit more shadow as you go into that. Looking at this one a bit more as it goes down into the flower. Just taking that colour, as you can see, I'm working on the whole thing and trying to think about the whole painting as I'm working. Becoming a bit lighter now. Indian yellow. I'm getting near to my highlight colour, so I need to perhaps just take it down a bit to see what that looks like. Because I still haven't cleaned my brush, I think we're okay. That isn't my highlight colour yet. Shading in there. This is a square brush I'm using. I like a filbert as well, but this square end is quite nice because you can cut in with the shape of the brush as well. It works quite well for me. A few more bits in here. The highlights can go on top of this afterwards, hopefully. I can see there's a light, really light edge there. I might even end up using pure white, having said I don't. Depends how dark you are to start with. Because if I've got a really dark background, that would read as a light a light colour anyway. A bit lighter on that. Still going with the Indian. I like the Indian yellow. It's a nice warm colour. Get that in. I'm going to start soon having to look at where I want my dark greens, because the dark greens are going to help give the form and the shape to the flowers as well, because I can give it depth with those. Cut into there. Right, a few more lights in there. It's beginning to build up. The ones on this side are going to get the light more. I'm still putting the paint on fairly thinly though. I think at the end you can really lather it on, it's wonderful. Texture as well as colour. So I'm feeling the shape of that going over the top of that with the brush, curving the brush as I do it. So I've got most of my flower shapes sort of there, I think, yeah. There's another petal here, I haven't really given it much attention. Let's get that in a bit more. It's quite a dark edge on that as it is just against the others. So I'm going to start looking now at putting in a few darks, I think. The stem that joins the flowers is registering lighter than the background, so I have to bear that in mind. I might just to remind myself put that in now. I'm using the Indian and the green. Let's see, take that down with a bit of white. That's quite a nice colour. And it's not one flat colour. It's got light catching it. So it's not one colour straight. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a dark version of that. And then I can put a highlight on it. So if I get that in, it is quite dark just up against the flower. Again, this is, what number is that? This is an 04 brush. It's got a nice chisel on it so you can cut in. So I've got that as a, although I know there's highlights on it, I've done it as a dark. Now where's that one gone? Oh, it's over there. I haven't drawn that one. I'm going to put its stalk in though. And this one. So they're drawn in dark, but I've got my light colour here that I'm going to put the highlight on. But I'm not going to do that just yet because I want, if that's too fat, I can paint the background behind, and I can pinch that line to make it narrower by painting the background either side of it. That's quite a nice colour for the leaves. So I'm going to put a few leaves in now. Lost and found, follow them through. So if you've got a leaf starting here, follow it through. And am I painting over something? No, follow it through. Think about it going behind that petal. Again, you don't have to be too literal about these. You can put them in, and where they work to your advantage. So I'm going to put some more darks in there. Just sort of background, and pick out from that. I can pick out a few leaves. Light in there. I'm going to go a little bit bluer in there. Probably use too much white there. Let's go back. Just seeing what colour I've got. Another mix. That's no. Okay. So I've tried 2 or 3 different colours there just to see which colour is going to complement the background and work with what I'm doing. So these flowers back here, I don't want them, they're there, but I don't want them jumping out, so just a suggestion is fine. Got a bit slippery with my brush then, I'll take some of that out, wipe that out. And that's really dark there. Don't know if I want to go quite that dark. See if I can mix a sort of a greyish colour. Don't want too much white, it desaturates the colours, and you can go a bit muddy with it. I don't know if I like that. Let's try it. Well, the tone is right. I'm not sure if I really like the colour.
About halfway through our time, Mo.
Right, well, I'm going to just do a little bit more of this, and I think it's probably time for a little break.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA, Society for All Artists, is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing about being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
Welcome back. Well, I've had a quick look at it in the break. There's quite a bit to do, isn't there? I still haven't really decided which colours I'm using in the background, but we'll carry on. I'm going to put these buds in as well, because these are a lighter green. I'm going to get those in. I shall put the dark shadowed side in first. So I'm using ultramarine and a bit of Indian yellow. For the darker side here, which I've already sort of sketched that in, that doesn't come out very dark, but I don't want it too strong. And there we go. Now we can get the lighter colour on it. I've used lemon there. You have to be careful with lemon yellow. It can make a really acidic green. Normally if you mix a little bit of something else in with it, it's not too bad. But if you go in with lemon and then add blue, it can be a bit strong. So this still wants some highlights on it. Likewise, let's get some light. No, I was going to put some light leaves in, but I won't just yet. Right, let's get some more work in.
Jeanette, who's watching on YouTube, likes your earrings, loves your earrings.
Thank you, Jeanette. So do I. I'm afraid I've got quite a collection of earrings. I couldn't wear them all though. I can't think whether. Oh, gift from my son. Actually, my daughter-in-law's got a good choice. Yeah, I'm still going back into the greens again now. That's a bit green. I'm going to put the tiniest touch of red into that, if you can see. But it's by adding red, that's taken it down to sort of more of a rusty colour. I'm going to put a bit more. That was a bit too rusty. Oh, that's a bit dark. But you do need some darks. If you're going to put darks in, they want to be in the centre, because that's where your eye is going. You don't want to be distracted by contrast. Your eye will always go to the strongest contrast, light and dark, and straight lines as well. So if you want this to work as a centre thing, you really need to draw the eye into the middle. And so get your darkest darks next to where you think your lightest colour is going to be, which in this case is going to be this flower. So I need to concentrate on getting some darks against this. So I'm cutting across that background flower and I'm picking it up again under here. That's diluted itself. Take a little bit more. There we go. I haven't really diluted this paint at all. I'm working with it pretty neat. So that's taking your eye to the centre. We'll get some more darks in there. Bringing them down. So we don't have to worry too much about the background. Now it's getting a bit too dark on the outside. I'm contradicting myself there, aren't I, by doing that? Oh, finger's wonderful. I usually end up absolutely covered in paint. So I've done that as dark, but I need to put a highlight on it. Let's try cadmium rather than the lemon. Yes, that's quite nice. We could highlight on the edges. Broken lines are quite useful. It makes it doesn't look solid then. It keeps it all going. I mustn't lose those stems that I put in earlier. I want to keep those. Keeping the greens in here. Dark coming out there. I might just put a bit more dark in this bud, just to give it a bit more definition. It has got its little stalk as well. Mustn't forget that. Which again has got a light and a dark side. I've just got the dark side of it at the moment. There we go. And I must try and remember to put the highlight on it as well. So get that turned under there. Don't all have to be definite shapes. I've got a few sort of random marks going on as well. Yep. Right, a bit more background colour. I know, I'm going to use some of that lovely turquoise. Maybe not. Why not? Still quite thin and washy. It doesn't have to be a flat background, as long as it works for you. I don't know if any of you saw the article in the paint magazine I did on tulips. I did that in a similar way to this, and I couldn't decide. I'd blocked the background in, but I couldn't decide if to do the background or not. So in the end, that's the actual painting I did. In the end, I just left it as it was because it didn't really need it. So with that picture, which is similar colours, I just concentrated on the composition, the flowers, the leaves, looking to get the highlight in the centre with the strong darks. And when I finished, I haven't done the background. Decided not to. So, but I do feel that this, because it's a light background, it needs something strong behind it. So you can have fun by putting washes in. Because I've got that colour up there, I'm going to bring it in down here as well, so it all ties in together. And obviously I'm doing this in a very short space of time. If you can take more time over it, you can be more considered about how you put the colours on and think about it more, what you're doing. I'm going to say I might even just put a few touches in there as well as suggesting background. It's such a gorgeous colour. So it just helps to bring the whole thing together by having some of that colour in different places. Follow through though, don't be too random with it. I think half the battle when you're painting is getting the canvas covered. Once you've done that, you can push and pull and adjust your lights and darks. So I can see I need to get those in. It's a bit messy up there. It's a mucky colour. I know I smudged that flower, but it doesn't matter. I don't want them to look as if I've had a piece of paper and cut them out and stuck them on. So a few smudges is quite nice. I might lose an edge there or two. So we've lost the edge of that one in the background, but it's still kind of there. There's another one in there too. I might put something through there. Bring that down. So it's in the background, there's a bit of light in there, which is going to give me that stem back. Now I didn't clean my brush then. I've got some white in it, which just made that mix a bit chalky. Clean it because I want pure colour. That's the beauty of these pots, you know, all the sludge goes down to the bottom, they're brilliant. And the top, it seals it, and you can go out, tip it over, and it doesn't come out at all. They're really useful with its little sieve. Right, now I want a dilute mix because I'm still thinking about background colours. I'm going to choose a bit more of a warmer colour. I've used magenta, and it's quite thin, but I just want to add a little bit more colour to that mix. So it's still washy. As your painting progresses, you can add thicker and thicker paint, but I just thought I'd add a little bit of that colour in there. So like this up here, I'm not very keen on that colour, but it's a bit brown. I don't want brown in it. Let's take that out. a slightly better colour. I better come back to the flowers again, hadn't I? It's a bit... I often use the end of my brush just to soften a line. Right, flowers. Come back to those. Make sure your brush is clean, which I didn't, but I'm sure it is. Yeah, so I'm using the Indian yellow. Indian yellow is quite a translucent colour. You can use it quite nicely for glazing as well. Oh, it's a bit yellow. I'll try it. Yeah, a bit too yellow. I'm holding my breath now, can you tell? Right, get that over there. Don't lose that lovely bit of dark. It's still quite a big brush really when you think about the subject that I'm doing with flowers. It's still quite chunky, but the thing is, as soon as you pick up a small brush, you do start to fiddle. So I'm trying to avoid that. Just putting in the highlights, the lighter areas that I can see. Looks a bit weird, that piece there. I'm going to take that across. Hopefully that'll sort itself out. A few more bits of light in there. Underneath. The green lines that follow up, I think, will help to define the shape of the flower as well. Let's come back over to this one. Now that's really lovely and light on that highlight there. Bring that in. Take that over there. A few more lights, a bit more light on the edge. Losing some of that shadow. I can blend some of that shadow if it's too strong. I can blend it back in. Go over it and pick it up. Look, you can see just taking that and softening that colour, which was probably a little bit on the strong side, but it helped me to see where I was going with it. How you hold your brush makes an awful difference as to how you paint. I'm holding it, little finger, I'm holding it very loosely. I think if you hold it tight like this, you end up with a tight picture, which is not what I'm aiming to do. I'm hoping to get something fairly loose going here. So again, I want those shadows to blend a little bit. Use my finger. We've got that lovely greeny bit in there. Let's try some of that turquoise in there. Yes, it's very subtle, but it's there. Make sure you mix your paint well. And in there, lovely yellowy touches going in. And in there. So I'm losing some of the initial shadow colours that I put in as I'm working my way around. I've got this greeny colour on here as well, slightly stronger. Pick up a little bit of the lemon and get that in, that yellowy colour in there. That's the back of that one. It's very easy to get lost when you're doing something like this. And that comes into there. Not much showing on that side. Then we've got some green on this one too, but I think it needs to be a bit darker on that one because this one's got light on it, so the light bit is registering much darker on this flower. But they all look at the structure. Where does it go to? Follow it through. It goes into the stem, which I still need to highlight. It really needs to be quite a bit darker than the... I'm reluctant to pick the rigger up just yet because I know what will happen. I shall fiddle. So let's get the dark in there. Okay. Soften some lines, they're a bit hard. Yeah. A few colours in there. Can't see them because the camera's bled them out, but I'm pretty sure that this is going to have that little bit of green in like the others, so I'm putting it in where I think it should be. Oh, I better not forget these lovely buds up here. Put some, I don't want to go too light with them, because if I do, it's going to draw the eye up there too much. They have got some nice highlights on them. Not quite as light as I should have got it. Get a few highlights on a few leaves as well. So the paint's getting a bit thicker now. It needs to be a bit brighter too, Mo. That's got more yellow in that. Probably needs to be a bit bluer. It's gone chalky again. It very quickly, if you use too much white, can, as I say, desaturate the colour and it goes a bit flat. Says she, still using it. Try to lose a little bit. I don't mind the background coming through, because as I said before, it helps to give a bit of a harmony to the whole thing. Okay, so I need to get some darker leaves in now. I haven't done, we should do at all this point, is to stand back and have a good look at the picture. Time is of the essence. Gone back to the dark green again. Just touches, losing some of the background, throwing the flower out a little bit more, because you can cut in with some more finer lines. Let's start with another brush. I see artists painting and they've got hands full of brushes, one for each colour. I start with one, have a handful of them, and I'm still using the one I started with. Nothing wrong with that. I was just wondering then about putting a lighter area up there, but I've decided against it. I thought it might work, but probably not.
We've got about 10 minutes left, Mo.
10 minutes, right, okay, let's see what I can make of this. Okay, well, I'm going to start putting in a bit of fine detail, I think. Where's my lovely rigger gone? There it is. So I'm going to now make sure that's clean, start to put in a few highlights on my stems. I've lost my stems now. I've lost the end of it, the highlighty bit, the bit that I wanted to highlight. It's not there, but there we go. Think about where it's coming from and where it's going to, and the values will change where you get bits of shadow on it, so it will be darker just before it gets to the flower itself. because the flower itself is casting a shadow onto it. So I'm going to follow that line on the petal back onto the flower. Likewise on this one, this is going to help define the shape of the petal. These again, I've got that pale line because it's got a sort of a shadow to it, but it's a darker line that leads onto the flower. And here. We've got this, the stamen's lovely, the one that comes right out. We must get that in. It's a very dark green. Get that in. I'm going to move it across so that it's in front of the petal. So you've got a bobbly bit on the end of that into the middle. Then we've got the little, I don't know what they're called. Are they stamens as well? The bits that hold the pollen, the bits that get yellow everywhere on your clothes and on the tablecloth. Let's get some on this side as well. That one. Trying to mix that lovely dark colour there. I've used the violet with the red. I think that's going to be quite a nice colour. They're quite dark. In fact, if I'm not careful, it's going to detract from other things because it's about the darkest bit of the picture. But we need to have them there because they help to show us the flower itself. Now this one's just newly opened, so they haven't turned that dark red yet. They've got quite a lot of pollen on them. I'm putting the dark on it first, then I can put highlights on it. This one's lost its ones, but I'm going to put them on anyway. You have to think how they go. Yeah, this is an advantage of having given the flower a good study, worked out how the structure of the flower works, then you can know what you're doing with it, where things are supposed to be. So I've put the dark on and then the light of it goes on afterwards. Ooh. Be careful because you do pick up, because it's so wet, you pick up the colour underneath. These are really dark, so I'm not going to paint over it all. Okay. There we go. I might just put some dark in behind that because I've lost the shape of that one. Again, I say I don't want it to be too rigid, but I do want to see the shape of it. Lost the shape of that there a bit too. You see, this is the thing afterwards. You can cut in and redefine shapes a little bit. I'm just cutting in a little bit more around here. It's all a bit green. I had intended putting a bit more variation in the background, but so seem to quickly run out of time. Let's use some of the violet. So I'm using some violet and red in there to get some of those strong darks. If you've got a picture that's predominantly green, a little bit of red is wonderful because it brings it to life. So this stem here that was a bit fat, trim it, but I'm just going each side of it to make that line finer. So if you've got a line you think, oh, that's a bit fat, just trim it down by painting up to the edge of it. Follow that red through. It's quite nice, that colour in there actually. It gives a nice contrast to it. And I think probably at this stage I ought to start looking at a few final highlights. Make sure my brush is really clean. And pick up some white. Let's just try pure white. I think we can get away with that. You can see why I said at the beginning, hold off on your whites, because if you'd put white in too soon, you'd never be able to get a highlight afterwards. Again, still think about the shape of the flowers, the edge. There was a beautiful edge on this one. I don't know if I can get it with this big fat brush. Had intended doing it with the rigger, but by using the edge of the brush, there, got that on, highlight on there. You can put the paint on quite thickly here, it works very well. Bit of texture, good. There are limits though. Okay, so highlight up there. Yeah, that needs a bit more light on it there. But there aren't, hopefully, too many straight lines. I've got this wonderful brush here. It's called a rake. It's called a silver rake. This is a small one. And if you've got straight edges, what you can do is just flick it away, just to break the edge up. It brings it to life a little bit. They're wonderful brushes, actually. I think people probably might use them for painting grass, but I bought it so that I could do little flicks. Where's my brush with the white on it? Bit more highlight on that. And that's better. Bit of light on those. I haven't put much highlight on the leaves as such. There would be some leaves coming down, showing a bit of light. Not all the way down, just broken bits. I lost my rigger again. I want to put just a bit of highlight on that stem there and there, just to bring some light as well as some dark into the centre. Just follow that through a little bit there. Don't know where it's going to, but we can just put a little bit on there. A few more lights on there. Losing that. And perhaps just a few flicks of light, bit of colour, just to add interest, just to break up that background. Nothing in particular. Stop it looking too static, really. Losing that edge there. Probably ought to have done a little bit more there. Anyway, a time's of the essence, so let's just put a little bit of dark in there to lose some of that. And I think I've got to have a highlight on there. Oh, that's thick paint. I don't think I've ever put paint on as thick as that without a palette knife. I'd like to have carried on and done a little bit more with that, but I think we'll call that a do. And what I shall do is very quickly Oop. There goes my photo reference. There we go. Always looks better when you put it in a frame. So there we go. Bit of work to be done on it, obviously, but I'm quite pleased with the way that came out. So if you've stayed with me for this long, thank you for watching, and hope to see you again sometime. Bye.
Hi, I'm Vic Bearcroft. I've created my half of the postcard and now I'm going to pass it on to my painting partner.
What have you got for me, Vic? Half a skull. What are you trying to say to me, Vic? Are you calling me an old fossil? Okay, let's see what we can do with it.